This grave got ripped open.
Holy moly. That's not good.
That one's falling over.
They're all like...
Neglected.
Yeah.
What is it you see here? For anyone who doesn't already know, I did a very sacrilegious thing. When Anne and I got engaged, we did something crazy and blew some savings we didn't have on a trip to Europe back in November 2022.
Herbert Marcuse. He came up here to knock on this door and ask Heidegger why he had not apologized and denounced the Nazis. Now, all this time later, via here.
Also, there's like cows on the hill over there.
We could justify this because our plan was to no longer live in the States once we got back. That was when we moved to Mexico and I built Theory Underground. But with that said, while in Europe, we did what I took to calling a graveside tour of famous dead people, including Marx, Heidegger, Husserl, Hegel, Descartes, Freud, etc. I've released half of those videos so far. I just wanted to say, before I let this one begin, that anyone who thinks it is super offensive that I am doing this kind of culture vulture bullshit in Europe, deal with it. Look, I'm sorry the plebes have escaped the Amazon warehouse. I'm sorry I'm getting my muddy hands all over your supposed culture. And I'm also sorry to any of the dead people who might have felt bummed out or envious because we weren't there to visit them. I only hope that Levinas would not have been so offended. Like, my image of Levinas is that he wouldn't have been offended, but you know what? If he would have been, if he was like thinking it's disrespectful to do something like this in a graveyard, okay, fair enough. Fair enough. That's a valid position. But, you know, different people have different understandings of what respect is. I think everybody else wants to just let these people be forgotten by history. And I think that there's something special to actually knowing that you're close to them, even if they're not around anymore. Like, that's not a joke. I'm not joking around about that. I think it's serious. I think it matters because these people are friends, they're frenemies, they might be actual enemies, but they're real people who inhabit our life world still today. And so, you know, anybody who's got a problem with it can cut us a little slack. There's bigger problems in the world, and I felt some kind of a weird impulse to do this, mainly because I was surprised nobody else had done it, and it just seemed like something someone has to do. Touring to see the sights? Sure, but why not dead philosophers? That's way more exciting to me. Especially because they're not dead, in a sort of sense. In a sort of sense, they've succeeded to instigate a conversation that doesn't stop with their actual physical life, but their thinking has an impact on us still today. And so I think that's a good reason to pay respects. Also, what can I say? I think it was romantic. It was a great little engagement tour. And the reason I'm releasing it now is because I'm teaching Totality and Infinity in August 2024, as well as in January 2025. So, yeah, if you don't really know much about Levinas, this is a chance to get a little bit of info about him. I'm sharing this info not with a theory community so much as Anne, who, I mean, she's kind of new to the world of theory when she's interviewing me about these kinds of questions. With that, yeah, I hope that you will enjoy.
We're here to pay our respects to Emmanuel Levinas, born 1905, died 1995. And out of everybody in France, out of all the people that we can see, he's the first major one we wanted to see after Descartes. We went first to Descartes because he's really the father of modern philosophy, and in so many ways all of these other major thinkers that we're drawing from are critiquing him. But Levinas proposes a critique and a radical perspective on modern philosophy and the West that is much deeper and more thoroughgoing than anything else that's ever been done.
Okay. So tell us then, why is Emmanuel Levinas important to the field of philosophy?
It's kind of like what I said at Heidegger's grave, which was that we have internalized presuppositions, taken for granted frameworks, language, culture, understandings, interpretations that we're not able to see. And if we're always just defensive and studying just to defend our worldview, then it's going to be even harder to see those things. But when we give ourselves over to someone who did not share many of our assumptions and actually brings a nuanced, deep, and rich perspective on all of that, even if we disagree with them, we should really take our time before writing them off or, forming our criticism. We should really take our time working through their thought, because we will be better for it. I said that before, but Levinas is someone people usually turn to after having studied Heidegger for a long time, or when they realize they really want to read phenomenology, but they can't believe that one of the most important phenomenologists, Heidegger, became a Nazi. They will often go to Emmanuel Levinas. I think that Dr. Ian Thompson makes a really good case for the fact that a person who goes to Levinas for phenomenology and therefore thinks they don't have to read Heidegger is done a disservice. That professors who do this or instill this impression in their students are doing them a disservice. And that to really work through them, to work through him, you have to first go through Heidegger. Now, I'm not going to argue that you have to read him first, but you don't get to just dismiss him. But yeah, I do think that people can become Heideggerians kind of trapped inside a sort of Heideggerian world of terminology and ways of thinking, and that Levinas offers a breath of fresh air and a new take on all of that. So the reason that he's so influential on the field of philosophy, though, is because in a sort of sense he's the biggest outsider to it, and because he's the one who first interpreted or translated Husserl. It was Levinas who studied under Husserl and Heidegger, and so he was known in that scene. But the reason he was always an outsider was because he was a French person, but also, and especially to a lot of French people, first and foremost, a Lithuanian Jew. That meant for a lot of people that they just didn't take him seriously, which meant that he had to work harder and think harder in every way. The impact he's had today is mostly through the works of people like Judith Butler and Simon Critchley, people who use Levinas for social justice purposes. And that's because he is the thinker of the other. We'll be visiting Simone de Beauvoir's grave, I think on this trip, hopefully, she said that woman is other. Edward Said said that the Oriental is other. All of these different French theorists are thinking about the term same versus other because of the dialectical approach developed first by the German idealists, but especially Hegel. But they take it into different directions, thinking about what is otherness, how does it work, how does it work in respect to subjectivity and the development or formation of an ego. With Levinas, I think we get the most rigorous and well thought out terminological approach for working through thinking about how one exists in the world in relation to others and otherness. He sees the ego as always radically separated. Yes, we are always being in the world with others, as Heidegger says. But at the end of the day, you also always find yourself isolated and alone, in the sense that others can't always be there for you, and you sometimes have to exist for yourself and find a way to survive and to make things work. He presents a world, he presents a perspective where as you develop as from a child to an adult, that subjectivity develops a sort of like cocoon, a barrier, a defense mechanisms against the chaos and unpredictability of the outside world. Part of that is through language, we interpret everything. And we interpret it in ways that will make us feel comfortable, that will make us feel safe and secure. And the way we do this is often by simplifying that complexity, by simplifying that chaos, by developing simplistic concepts that we put onto the other and to otherness. Oh, that person's like that. That means they're like this. I don't have to take them seriously. Oh, that person's like that. That person's like this. I don't have to take them seriously. Or, on the other hand, you reduce them to the same. You say, that person's like that. I'm like that. We're the same. This is a self-serving, convenient, but ultimately self-undermining approach to thinking about the world, and it's a deep, deep-seated habit. So Levinas offers us a really rigorous way of thinking through all of that, and it's not something, as with all of these thinkers, that can just be summarized and handed over. And it can be very annoying to hear people talking about it within the jargon, but it's worth thinking through on its own terms. So yeah, people turn to him usually for thinking about otherness, for thinking about morals, for thinking about ethics, for thinking about social justice.
So, obviously, you are very dedicated to be here at Emmanuel Levinas's grave site, seeing as you've been standing out here in the rain for the last 5 minutes, slowed down luckily, and we even came here last night only to discover the cemetery was closed.
We came all the way out here.
It's very much out of the way. We had to take multiple buses and trains. And
it closed 15 minutes before we arrived. But on Google, there is no closing time.
We're like, oh, it's cemetery.
Yeah, lots of cemeteries don't have closing hours. In fact, I'd say most don't. But that's just...
So we made a second expedition way out of the way to be out here. So Levinas has some importance to you. So tell us why.
Well, beyond all the reasons that I've already kind of said, which I think are more standard reasons. I think it's really too bad that he gets used for political reasons in the ways that he does, which is almost like a sort of dogmatic, axiomatic, theological application of his fundamental perspective and operating assumptions into a sort of approach or program to politics. I don't get the impression from Butler, for instance, that she spent enough time reading him on his own terms. I find it ironic to use a thinker like Levinas to reduce him to one's self-same project. I think he needs to be wrestled with on his own terms. And he is, at the end of the day, an anti-political thinker. That's problematic for anybody who thinks that we need to change the world or prioritize changing the world. And fair enough. That can be problematic, but it's still worth thinking through a worldview from the standpoint of somebody who says, maybe sometimes if politics demands that we make decisions that are evil, or have to choose between the lesser evil, or say that the ends justify the means, maybe there's actually something else. Maybe there's actually some higher purpose than getting caught up in these catch-22 games that turn us into something we can't live with. Levinas, that's fine.
Breezy.
Levinas is a critic. Oh, I got a head. Yeah, there we go. Levinas is a critic of this idea that you're only important if you become one of the big figures on the stage of history. The heroes to him are the ones who go unsung, the ones who aren't necessarily remembered in a place like this, the ones who aren't like he is right now, being kept alive by us who've survived to tell the story and keep him alive. He is developing a stance that says there's another kind of time, there's another kind of existence, there's another sense of purpose and what matters that's more important than being remembered on the stage of history. So this is one of the fundamental ways that he is ultimately going to disagree with Hannah Arendt. And it's very easy to say, well, yeah, but he was a religious practicing Jew, so maybe that's why. And someone like Arendt, or a lot of these other French thinkers, they didn't have these theological commitments. They didn't have this faith. Okay, true. But something I find so admirable in his project is that though that is operating for him at the base level of his belief, he does his absolute utmost to work within the Kantian schema, saying, I'm going to work within what can be experienced and verified, or what can be experienced and talked about phenomenologically, and we will do our deductions from that and develop an immanent critique of phenomenology and philosophy itself, but working within its own parameters. He says, it would be easy for me to make an argument for the absolute moral responsibility we have to others off the basis of, the idea of a final judgment. The idea that everything you do is ultimately going to be accounted for before the throne of God. He says, it would be easy for me to do that, but I'm not going to, because he understands that nobody who's doing philosophy is going to take such a thing seriously. Because radical doubt and going with absolute certainty, or at least going with clear and distinct ideas in the sort of tradition of Descartes, is something, it's a standard that's been raised now where anybody with intellectual integrity, hearing from another person they don't agree with, is ultimately going to be like, I don't know about that. And so he goes, I'm not going to just make these transcendental, leaps. I'm going to work from the level of experience. And the experience that he's working with is one that Martin Buber is so famous for, which is that there is a difference between the I and thou and the it or that, right? There's a difference between a thou and a rock or a tree. Heidegger also says there's a difference between a what and a who. But Buber thought about this a lot more seriously in a sort of prolonged fashion in his book, I and Thou. Levinas takes that and Heidegger's project and Husserl's project and the rest of Western philosophy, and he develops a radical way of thinking about how the other is always defying our attempts to categorize, to pigeonhole, to reduce, to simplify, to same or other, and dismiss or appropriate. Setting up this idea that we are radically indebted and responsible to others, and that we don't even know what to do with that. It creates an impossible demand on us that makes us fearful and feel overcome and like we want to give up. It's like when you walk past homeless people every day. It's easy to just go, nope, and you just turn off a switch, and then but there's this part of you that's always like, I don't know what to do. And that struggle of not knowing what to do is from the demand that's placed on us by the face-to-face relationship. And the face-to-face relationship is the origin, for Levinas, the origin of everything. It's the origin of our ability to communicate. It's the origin of our ability to, and I don't mean face-to-face in the sense of like physical face-to-face, because for him the face is a lot more of a technical concept that he develops throughout his work. But it really means basically like the human expression of a who overflowing a what, of a who overflowing a concept, of infinity overflowing our totalizations. That puts a demand on us that's impossible, and that is a struggle to deal with. And the struggle to deal with that is at the origin of ethics. The struggle to deal with that is the moral realm. And even if we're not able to come up with simple solutions or say, the categorical imperative solves it, virtue ethics solves it, don't worry, I've got it, utilitarianism. No, none of these approaches in ethics solve the problem. The problem itself is a profound, irreducible basis of all human problems and all human scientific, rational, artistic projects. That's what he's arguing throughout all of his life's work. And he always brings it back to that face-to-face encounter.
So, with all of that being said, sounds like Levinas is another important thinker that people might want to try to struggle with. And so, if they do, what text, work, book should someone start with?
I don't think people go to Levinas for a pleasureful time. He's not something you read at the beach. You're right, the word struggle is good. In the Lacanian sense, there is jouissance in struggling with the work of someone like Levinas, because he develops his own language. Every one of these great thinkers develops their own terminological system, because the existing concepts come with so much baggage and problems, and they don't want to get bogged down in that, and so they have to think outside of that and develop something new. His is so beautiful and poetic, but also just so hard. I don't think that you'll get a lot out of reading, say, an interview where he's actually pretty lucid. And there are interviews where he's pretty lucid. I don't think you'll get a lot out of that until you've actually struggled with him. And just making sense of the first chapter of Totality Infinity itself is going to take forever, probably multiple tries, but you can get so much from a paragraph, right? I mean, we live in a world of paragraphs. Paragraphs on Facebook, paragraphs on Twitter, paragraphs on Reddit. We read paragraphs all the time, and people work at making them wittier, punchier, more clickbaity, more interesting, more accessible, whatever. This is the opposite of all of those things. It's not clickbaity, it's not accessible, it's impenetrable, and it's painful, and you really have to work through it. But I think that, just on the first page of Totality and Infinity, I could spend a whole hour reading it and talking about it because it's so beautiful and profound. He asks the question. He says, everyone will readily agree that it is of the utmost importance to find out if we are not duped by morality. Then he says, is morality just this thing that naive people get duped by? He talks about the condescension or the laughter in the eyes of the hard realists who are here to make those difficult decisions that require exterminating large groups of people or dropping bombs where there's going to be a lot of casualties. These people, regardless of their stated ideology, these people who are ready to do and justify unending harm towards others on the basis of saying, no, ethics and morality, that's something that only exists because of war. That's something that only exists because the state has conquered every possible form of resistance and then created a safe world. If that's true, then morality is merely a byproduct of war. Thou shalt not kill is actually the exception, not the rule. Thou shalt not kill is something created within the space, sustained by an active state of war, by a military-industrial complex. That's all there in the first paragraph.
Damn.
So I just say read Totality and Infinity. You're going to struggle, you're going to cry, you're going to throw this book against the wall. You're going to say, why did you say it this way, Levinas? Why couldn't you just speak like a normal person?
Why can't you just speak like a normal person, they will say.
And he'll be here, laying in here, laughing at you. Ha ha ha.
He'll go, you'll figure it out.
You'll figure it out and you'll be better for it. So yeah, I look forward to reading it with people in the near future. That's for sure.
Yeah, me too. Cheers. Anything else you need to say?
Well, I'm glad we came here.
Yeah.
And one of my biggest goals is to take on Otherwise Than Being in the near future. Little anecdote.
Antidote?
Yeah, a little antidote. Here's a little anecdote about Levinas. It was basically Derrida who discovered him. Went into a bookstore, saw his book, Totality and Infinity, pulled it off the shelf, starts looking at it, goes, wow, this is amazing. Reads it, is profoundly changed by it, but then uses his deconstructive method on Totality and Infinity, writing a piece called Metaphysics and Violence, where it's like a 70-page deconstruction of Totality and Infinity. He proposes all kinds of radical critiques that Levinas then takes to heart and takes more seriously than most thinkers ever take their critics, which makes sense because he is the thinker of responding to the call of the other. If responding to the call of the other is at the basis of rationality and discourse and language and morality and everything else, then when called to task by someone whose heart is in the right place and whose mind is working through your work seriously, it changed his entire project, is what I'm trying to say. Levinas' entire project, he spent 10 years reworking his ideas, and that's what Otherwise Than Being is. And I haven't read it yet. I've tried to multiple times. It is hard. And what I want is to be able to read it with other people like Mikey someday, like Bert someday, like my friends and fellow travelers who also get jouissance from reading this kind of stuff. And we'll find ways of making it a bit more accessible for people who want to try. Yeah, that's my goal, is to be able to read Otherwise Than Being. And the fact that I'm still thrown by it after being able to read people like Hegel and Heidegger and Husserl and all these others, it's like that, even Totality Infinity. It's like he had to reinvent a whole new approach after Totality Infinity. It's like, oh my God. So, yeah, this is helping me. Being here with him, his bones, and talking about it. This is definitely inspiring me to want to take that on. There was something else I was going to say, but it's
It'll
fine.
come to you.
It'll come to me. Let's go to Lacan.
We cannot do direct revolution, but the only way to lay the foundation for it is to do what you are doing to move the underground. It's a theoretically correct title.
Welcome to Theory Underground, a place for workers with earbuds who are tired of letting others read and think on their behalf, slipstreaming our way into an understanding of the situation that short-circuits the deadlocks of our moment.
Research at Theory Underground focuses on what is most important for understanding our current situation: theory of the subject, capital, time-energy theory, critical media theory, CMT, and the most essential critiques necessary for understanding why the theory, ideology, and common sense of influencers left to right misses the mark.
Theory Underground is coming to a city near you. What that has meant in the last year is traveling across the United States, into Canada, and then all over Europe to promote our books, courses, and ideas related to time energy and underground theory.
You've been reading Underground Theory.
I'm a publisher and an editor. I run a review of books. Literally, it's my living. This is the best edited collection I've ever read.
Okay, picture this scene. America, early 2021. An Amazon warehouse worker arises from the emerging underground theory internet scene to create spaces for untimely topics and concerns that are too often neglected or kept in isolation today. Joined by a revolving cast of underground theorists, academics, and critics, he establishes what will become Theory Underground, a teaching, research, and publishing platform by and for working-class intellectuals, autodidacts, and academics who want to do more than they're able to do within the confines of academia. That warehouse worker's name is David McKerracher, and his book Time Energy is his first major contribution to the world of theory. It was recently reprinted with a foreword by none other than Slavoj Žižek, who also contributed to Theory Underground's latest book.
My Bible, it's an excellent book.
A collection of essays called Underground Theory.
What you just heard is an excerpt from the Strange Exiles podcast, episode 23, where Bram from Strange Exiles interviewed me and Mikey. For those who don't know, Mikey is the author of the Dangerous Maybe blog. We are publishing one of his books here shortly at Theory Underground. He's also a lecturer at Theory Underground, and he's someone I've been friends and a collaborator with for over 10 years. But most importantly for you all, he's a fantastic lecturer, and it's a crime that he has to do wage labor right now. One of the long-term goals of Theory Underground has been now for a couple of years to hashtag free Mikey. That is something that I've been really pushing, but first I had to get freed from wage labor, which was achieved this year. That's right. Thanks to my monthly seminar subscribers, I was able to quit Amazon and do Theory Underground full time. Now I'm announcing the next big phase of the plan, which is the Mikey Down Seminar. What monthly subscribers to the Mikey Seminar are paying for is a survey of philosophy, including deep dives into Žižek, Land, Lacan, Baudrillard, Bataille, Lyotard, and ultimately the whole history of philosophy.
We're trying to build like this ongoing seminar. right? And that's what I really like about this thing, where, if I'm teaching a main text, that's something I got to focus on. I got to really, but the seminar thing, we can do this stuff all the time, where we dive deeper into concepts, we dive deeper into certain, sections of books or whatever, and we can really do this nuanced stuff.
I think that there's probably no better way for us to accelerate our learning in these areas than by slipstreaming Mikey. And that has been my belief for years and years and years now. It's official. You're able to help out. You're able to get involved. You're able to benefit directly from liberating him from wage labor. Get on it right now. Do it. Just go. Stop what you're doing. Go click the button, subscribe. This is what you do. Subscribe to him. If you're already signed up for the ongoing Theory Underground seminars, then that's the ones that I do with my wife, Anne. Though that's getting an upgrade, which means that I will be doing one session per month that is just me, and then I will also be doing the ones with Anne, which are a crash course in sociology, anthropology, the social sciences, and ultimately Marx, Heidegger, Levinas, Bourdieu, imminently critiquing pop psychology, sociology, self-help, and ultimately the doxa of our time. But if you would like to be a subscriber to both Mikey's seminar and the seminar that the Snellgrove McKerrachers are doing, then the best way is to become a Tier 4 subscriber, or you can be a Tier 2 subscriber to each of us. The reason this matters is because Tier 2 is like pretty much the best bang for your buck. It gives you huge discounts on all of the courses that we do. But if you can't afford it, Tier 4 is amazing because it gives you Tier 3 access at both Mikey's seminar and ours.
And finally, not everybody has time to be part of these ongoing research seminars, and they just want to fund the paid content for the YouTube and podcast. And so thank you so much to our patrons over at Patreon. They're the ones funding all the free stuff. So big thank you to Bert, Marilyn, Carl, Sahil, Zozandra, Nikolai, Darian, Tyler, and Mandeep, and all the other wonderful patron people. Patreon people. And thank you to all the other wonderful Patreon people. Thank you so much to all of you patrons, and also to the special subscribers and the paying subscribers. Oh my god, it's just so awkward. Thank you, Patreon. Patrons, thank you. Oh, okay. And to all the other wonderful patrons, thank you so much, all you patrons. And also a special thanks to the subscribers on the YouTube side, as well as the paying subscribers over at Substack. Why can't we do this? Fuck. You guys, please. Just thank you. Thank you, everyone, for making this bullshit possible. Thank you to the subscribers. You do it. You did so good. Thanks, guys.